What if animals were as smart as humans? That is what we're here to answer today. Ben, do it. Do the thing. Our podcast, not the Butterfinger podcast, the question podcast.
That was a very aggressive asking of the question.
Let me change my notes back to the animals part, not the Butterfinger part, Marcus. That's a bit of a left, out of left field there, but whatever. Okay. So what if animals were as smart as humans? So the sort of what I started thinking about then was communication, because obviously if they're as smart as we're going to want to talk to them and have them talk to us, because that's a thing that we do with things that are as smart as us, I guess. It just makes sense. So the first thing to go down, obviously, is just like vocalization, actual talking. That's sort of the first thing I want to figure out, was just how, because the simplest solution obviously is just teach them to speak. Like, they obviously won't know how to speak when it first happens, but we could teach them if they're as smart as us, because you can teach people new languages, So my first question was sort of, what animals can actually produce human-like sounds? Because any of them could theoretically learn English, whatever language they want to learn. And actually, there have been a few different animals that can do this. So there was an orangutan back in the 60s named Tilda, who could emulate human speech.
Ooh.
This one was kind of... So I listened to most of these, the ones that like had recordings of them. This one was kind of iffy. It was one of those ones where it was like the actual description I saw was like, she could use vowel and consonant-like sounds in a human-like rhythm. So
what's a consonant-like sound?
Yeah, I could kind of see what they meant, but it wasn't the most compelling one, I guess.
Yeah, that's like me being like, yeah, this is a podcast of me almost speaking Japanese.
Right, exactly. So then there was a beluga whale named Nock in the Vancouver Aquarium, who died in 1999, who basically could overinflate his nasal cavities and then make human-like sounds. This one was even more of a stretch. I'm not going to really give this one credit, but it was listed and I felt like I should mention it. By some definition of human-like, I guess.
Maybe he could speak, but he just refused to, because the only thing they would try to teach him was knock-knock jokes.
That could be it, actually. That could very much be it. Third, obviously, like parrots. No shit. Like, that one, they don't understand what they're saying, but they can already do it. So, parrots, obviously. Fun fact, the reason that parrots can do that, apparently they have a very like complicated like throat and tongue musculature. They can just like super like modify their vocal passage to make the sounds. I don't know. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, my grandmother actually has an African parrot, the super smart one, and it definitely picked up some words. But it's funny because she lived with her sister, and sometimes they'll use more colorful language, and then the bird will curse when people are over, and she's like, I don't know where he gets it. It's like, well, I do. I've got an idea.
Yeah, maybe a bit of an idea. Yeah,
he must have come with these words.
Right? Yeah, the factory, And then so next there was an elephant. This one actually is really cool. So obviously elephants don't have like lips, or, a mouth structure the way that we do. But there was an elephant named Koshik, I want to say, in Korea. I don't remember which Korea. I'm going to guess South Korea. Otherwise, we wouldn't have heard about it. Hey.
Topical North Korea jokes?
Topical North Korea joke. But basically, its trainers would speak words in Korean, obviously. And then it would repeat them by putting the tip of its trunk into its mouth and modulate its vocal tract that way. Like by pushing on it with its trunk.
That's cool.
And this one is freaky. He like matches their voice exactly. It is honestly kind of disturbing. Cause like they will say a word and he'll sort of say it. And then like they'll say it another time and he'll say it a couple more times and he'll get closer and closer until he's like exactly echoing them. It's actually kind of bizarre. That one's actually pretty cool. But elephants pretty clearly could, they could definitely learn to speak. if they
Oh my god,
were
I have a
capable.
great mental image now of them taking over like the voiceover industry. And just like you just have this elephant like come on like go into like the recording studio and like gets a script. Like he's got like
Right.
headphones in, he gets a script, and he just like puts his like trunk like in his mouth, like down his throat. I don't
Yep.
know what you're talking
Exactly,
about exactly.
yeah. In his mouth. And then all of a sudden he's Morgan Freeman.
It's like they can't afford Morgan Freeman, so they get
Right,
an
so they
elephant
get an
to
elephant
do it.
instead.
And it's just
Um,
so this elephant just goes in and just like in a world.
but it takes him a couple tries, and it's like elephant sounds, and then it's like half elephant sound, half Morgan Freeman, and then suddenly it just is Morgan Freeman.
I like to imagine that Morgan Freeman is the halfway point between the elephant sound and any other vocalization. Like they have to go through Morgan Freeman.
Right, exactly. And then finally, the last one, and this is one that I think is just really cool, and I really enjoy a lot. So there was a seal. In 1971, there was an orphan harbor seal pup adopted by this couple in Maine. They kept it in their bathtub, and then it got too big for that. They put it in a pond. And then eventually got too big for the pond, like it was back behind their house, and they gave it to the New England Aquarium in Boston. And the owner, when he gave it to them, said that he thought the seal could talk. And obviously no one believed him because that's an absurd thing. That makes, just no.
That's just an absurd hypothetical.
Exactly, yeah. And then a few years later, the seal's name, by the way, was Hoover because it ate like a vacuum cleaner, apparently. I don't know. And a few years later, and I want to point out, this was in the article I read about him, Hoover reached sexual maturity and apparently at that point started speaking more clearly and most importantly, with a Boston accent. And he said a number of phrases including, hey, hello there, how are ya, get out of here, get down, and his own name.
Get out of here.
Get out of here.
What if you're in an aquarium with a seal just like, get out of
Yeah,
here?
he's like, how are ya? So that's a thing apparently. So apparently even seals can learn to speak with accents.
So the New England Aquarium, if they were that smart, would actually just be a bunch of seals being like, get out of here.
Exactly, yeah. They should definitely be doing that because that sounds incredible. And so actually one of the things that I learned that it turns out that what actually stops a lot of animals from being able to speak, like as in speak human-like, is actually the brain. It's not actually necessarily a physical thing. Basically, there's a set of like 50 genes that actually control the ability of the speech control center of the brain to learn to make new sounds.
Mm.
And like from there, control the vocal tract muscles to actually be able to reproduce those sounds. So like it was really interesting because the same set of genes that allow us to learn language and everything are the exact same genes that are working in like birds and to learn songs, which I thought was just like fascinating that was the same. But what I'm wondering is if all of a sudden animals have human intelligence, I would imagine that actually a pretty large number, like way more than we'd actually expect, would be able to just learn to speak. Maybe not as clearly as we do, but definitely understandably. There's things like, people talk about like hyenas being able to make human-like sounds. Like, I bet a lot of animals could actually do that.
Would they have like the mouth structure to like say our words?
Not all of them. So that is the thing. There are definitely some limitations. So definitely some animals that wouldn't be able to, like a lot of birds wouldn't be able to, just because they don't have, like parrots can, but they have weird ass giant tongue and like crazy throat muscles apparently. But like a lot of birds just don't have, they have like a beak.
I'm just like imagining like a crocodile trying to speak.
Right. Like that one might be a little rough, but beyond that, there are still some other options. One of them is sign language, not just standard like ASL, obviously, because a lot of animals don't have opposable thumbs or the same number of fingers as us. So we need to find out, some like simplified version. But I'm pretty sure you could make like a relatively, livably complete version of sign language using like 3 fingers, maybe.
Yeah, or like a slightly less shitty version of Morse code.
Right. That's the yeah. Morse code is sort of like the ending point where like most things can communicate in Morse code in some way, either through there's like 2 different kinds of vocalizations or whatever. But yeah. I think sign language actually, I think 3 fingers actually gets you a pretty good amount of the way of like most things being able to communicate. And you can put just like the basic words and stuff in like 3 fingers and more complicated things in multiple fingers, and then, go from there. And the other thing is I think actually writing is going to be surprisingly simple, because like basically anything with a claw, I was kind of thinking you could sort of dull down one claw to use for like writing, and just like have like inkwells around or something, or like, something like that. And then most things will be able to actually like write relatively easily. Obviously, insert chicken scratch joke here, but it would work. I think also technically, similarly, you could probably use touchscreens, not just like initially, but if you had like a like if they were capacitive and you had like a sleeve that goes on the claw or something, they could totally use touchscreens, which could get us pretty far too. In like a customer service situation, you could just like type in what you needed or whatever.
My customer service rep seemed crabby,
which is strange because he was a lobster. Hey, that was really dumb. Speaking of which, the one big spot that I had trouble with that I could not find an answer was water creatures in general.
I was going to ask
fish.
that.
I have no idea. Fish are a huge blind spot.
Yeah, fish.
Because they
are kind of screwed.
They like don't make sound and they have no limbs. So I don't really know. I don't know what you expect them to do.
They have to do an intricate dance.
Yeah.
I kind of have just at the trail end of my notes. I just have this written. I'm not sure where exactly I was planning on going with this, but it says, if animals are smart enough, they'll start using and making tools. Not only that, they'll probably make structures, among other things. And if you were a smart businessman, you may notice they'd want smartphones. So I guess you could like make a fish harness with like a cell phone at the end that they could like peck at, like if they pull their fins back and like hit it with their mouth.
I guess, yeah.
You'd have to like have it like dangle in front of them.
Right.
I guess it'd be like a bone on like a stick sort of thing. And they could like tap at it, like, I guess.
Yeah, they just peck at it. Yeah. I mean, they'll figure it out. They're pretty smart now.
Right? Well, they're only as smart as humans, so maybe it doesn't actually get them that far.
Oh, damn!
Hey,
self-burn! Self-species burn.
That's the best we could come up with was that harness thing, so...